Hey guys, it's Finch. What's up? Today we're back with another Metagame Monday, and we're going to be discussing the winners and losers of a potential Magearna ban. For those of you who don't know, we are currently suspecting Magearna in the FCCU Metagame. Just as some updates, I have posted the entirety of my laddering for suspect Rex on my channel. It was a 5-part speedrun with a hyper offensive team featuring Calm Mind plus Shift Gear Grassy Seed Magearna, which was pretty damn fun to ladder with if you ask me. But that aside, there are also some other videos such as World Cup games, 2 of them in fact, one of them that was uploaded just prior to this earlier today. I want to highlight how Choice Specs Magearna really rips through the metagame and common team structures, and why I personally consider it ban worthy, and why I believe on Wednesday when the voting starts, going into Thursday and potentially even Friday, it will ultimately be voted banned and then get banned in the metagame. Because of that, I want to say right now, first and foremost, that I think this is going to come into fruition. These things are going to impact the metagame. So there are going to be some Pokemon that are getting better and worse due to Magearna departing from the metagame. However, on the off chance that Magearna does not in fact get banned due to the suspect test, which, again, anything can happen, people are entitled to vote as they wish, and I'm not here to tell you how to vote so much as I'm just give my own personal opinions on things. I can't control you guys, and you guys can do whatever you wish, just like if you guys enjoy my channel, you guys, of course, are entitled to click that subscribe and like button, and if you're not, then that's totally chill too. But regardless of that, I just want to say that these all are only going to happen A, if the Magearna ban comes into play, and B, if the metagame kind of evolves as I theorize. Of course, there are ways to be wrong, and there are other potential trickle-down effects of Magearna ban that could get in the way of these things or potentially make them even more relevant. So because of that, I just want to make note that none of these are factual, none of these are set in stone, and there are a lot of different things that can happen. For example, one metagame trend can be prompted by Magearna getting banned. And that metagame trend could lead to various other metagame trends and metagame shifts. And even the slightest alteration in viability can lead players into using something or not using something else. And then that'll just shift the landscape of the tier entirely once that mindset shifts from one player to another and spreads like wildfire. So the fact of the matter is that metagame trends tend to be pretty volatile in the direct aftermath of bans, especially within the next coming week or two. And because of that, there are some things worth noting. First and foremost, all of these things on paper seem really good to me. And a lot of times things do transition from on paper to in practice. However, that is not 100% the case. So if you use some of these things and you notice that not a lot of other people are using them, or maybe they're not as effective because another trend that popped up is now helping check or counter this trend or this Pokemon, then there are still other Pokemon to try out. Not only things that I listed in this video either. For example, I'm listing 6 offensive and 6 defensive winners, but there are other Pokemon that could benefit from Magearna being banned. And there are other Pokemon that could potentially get worse from Magearna getting banned that I'm not listening in the losers column either. Or some of the losers could actually end up finding a different niche and getting better. And some of the winners could end up finding different checks and counters and getting worse. So the fact of the matter is that this is not fact. I'm not trying to rule with an iron fist and tell you guys what is good and what's not good, or necessarily what to use and what not to use. I'm not a member of a thought police society, thought police like leadership system. No. I believe you guys should use whatever the hell you want to use and have fun with it, because that's the most important part of this. But what this video is essentially me saying, okay, I believe that these Pokemon are going to get better or worse directly due to the presence of Magearna no longer being present in the metagame, if you will. So, direct beneficiaries of Magearna. Now, there are a couple ways something could benefit from something getting banned. First off, if the Pokemon that gets banned, Magearna, is in a direct competition with that Pokemon for an offensive or defensive role, then that Pokemon might potentially get better with Magearna getting banned, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, now it's your turn to be like up. It's your turn to, shine in the metagame with that thing gone. Alternatively, though, Pokemon that are direct checks or counters or just used due to the presence of the Pokemon that might be getting banned, i.e. Magearna, those Pokemon that are used, if they suddenly fall out of favor a little bit or opens up potentially different defensive structures, then the things that are going to be replacing it on those different defensive structures are Pokemon that might also be seeing uses as well. Finally, if Magearna is used to check common things in the metagame, then all of a sudden, those things that are checked by Magearna are held back by it or suppressed by Magearna, now all of a sudden, simply put, are going to be a lot better in the immediate aftermath. Now, people are going to react to those Pokemon, and that's oftentimes how those trends that I just alluded to form. Because of that, they might be good for a week or really good for like a week or two, and then all of a sudden start falling back to normalcy again. In which case, that's what we call a volatile trend. Some of these trends, in my eyes, not only that I list here, but also that might happen in the metagame that are or are not listed, could potentially be volatile temporary trends. And because of that, I just want to note that in a month from now, the metagame is probably going to look very different. We might have no Magearna, we might even have no Cinderace or something else, who knows, but What I can say is that some of these Pokemon are going to get better, and some of them maybe not so much. So what we have to do here, do our part, and maybe try out these Pokemon. Personally, some of these Pokemon I might try out in the official ladder tournament. Some of them I might not. It really depends on how I'm feeling and what comes to my mind in building. Because the fact of the matter is that we can all come up with so many different ideas without Magearna in the metagame, which is a lot less limited, and I'm really curious to see what people come up with. But anyway, speaking of things to come up with, these are the Pokemon that I came up with that are going to be winners of the potential Magearna ban. Notice how I separated them into offensive and defensive categories, so we're going to go over the 6 offensive winners first. The first one is going to be perhaps one of the more interesting ones, and that is going to be Choice Specs Analytic Magearna. Now, this is a Pokemon that I've actually been really high on for a while now, and some of you guys might have noticed that. I actually built it, my teammate, Insult and World Cup, helped put out the idea of Specs Analytic Magearna, and ABR is as well pretty high in it, and that's because there are really no switchers to it. Common checks to electric types such as Hippowdon, Excadrill, etc. are going to get shredded by Analytic Specs Flash Cannon. For example, Flash Cannon is going to be doing 65-70% to drill from Specs and Analytic boosted, whereas it's going to one-shot a physically defensive Hippowdon as well. And Steel Beam can also just shred drill, especially after Stealth Rock as well, which is honestly hilarious. That aside, though, Volt Switch is very spammable, and now that people aren't as paranoid as Specs Magearna, they're going to let their guard down, and structures are going to be really just stonewalled by Magearna, especially because Magearna is going to be able to shred things like Amoonguss and Toxapex, which previously could at least pivot into Toxapex to Magearna once or twice. All in all, I believe that Choice Specs Analytic Magearna is slept on already as is. And while Magearna is a bit better than it because this is a trick, stronger nuke and flash cannon, and a lot better bulk and defensive typing, Magearna is going to be able to fulfill almost as good role offensively while being worse defensively. But you can bluff other such as Magnapole. People might not expect Specs Analytics, so the first couple times you use it in the ladder, the first couple rounds like that, it's going to be really effective. And in my eyes, it's already an underrated breaker, but once Magearna goes, it's actually going to see the biggest increase in viability. Now, I know you guys are like, wait a minute, Finch, this is Magnezone, right? But there's no Hidden Power Fire, and on top of that, there is no Magnapole. This is a complete and utter departure from everything I've learned over the years in terms of Magnezone usage in prior generations and even earlier in this generation. And to that I say, yes, that is entirely fair. This is a completely different way to use Magnezone, not as a trapper, not as a supporter, but much differently as an outright breaker. But I want you to picture a scenario like this. You're facing a stall team. They have, say, Chansey or Blissey as their main, special pivot. Maybe they have a ground type like Hippowdon or even Quagsire, but those ground types can potentially get 2-KO'd by Specs Analytic Flash Cannon, or Steel Beam could just shred them as well. Sorry, those ground types, they aren't actually checks and counters. If you run the calcs, here, let me pause for a second. So, I know that the first Flash Cannon is going to do more because it's going to be Analytic Boost and switch in, but I just want to point out that this Specs Analytic Flash Cannon from Magnezone and an incoming Quagsire is doing 50.2 to 59.1%. So, then the second one after that, let's say I make it faster again, 999, sure, whatever, I don't care. Make it faster again, okay, great. Now, the next one's doing 38.5 to 45.4, so you just need a knockoff, or a Stealth Rock, or a Scald Burn, or a Toxic, or really any semblance of chip on Quagsire, and all of a sudden Magnezone 2-KOs it. And then you can just Volt Switch around their team. And think about it like this. An Analytic Volt Switch is going to be doing 25-30% to Chansey, probably like 30-35% to Blissey, maybe a bit less, maybe 5 or 7% less. I don't have to calculate in front of me, but let's say you do that twice. All of a sudden, they're at 50%, and each time I assume you have some physical attacker to complement that Magnezone, or someone with knockoff or trick to help complement the Magnezone and abuse those Pokemon, you're putting yourself in the favorable positions, and you're opening up for other special Pokemon. This Magnezone actually is a premier stall breaker in my eyes if you play it nicely, especially if you pair it with something like Wish plus Top or Clefable to help heal it up. In addition to that, though, it's really great against balance. It's hard to switch into, and in my eyes, it's going to serve less of a defensive role as Magearna. It's not going to come in as frequently. The games we've showcased in World Cup recently that I brought to on my channel, you saw Magearna come in at unrivaled levels for an offensive Pokemon with that much offensive presence. But Magnezone still can come in on things like Mandibuzz, Clefable, Corviknight, Amoonguss, Toxapex, etc. Sometimes it has to risk knockoff. Sometimes it has to risk a Scald Burn. Sometimes it has to risk taking a Foul Play or a Moonblast. And sometimes those Pokemon can run things like Protect or Faster Roost. Whatever, I get it, but Magnezone, when played well and timed well, is going to be really potent with the Specs Analytics set. And I think it's by far one of the most underrated Pokemon already. And once Specs Magearna gets banned from the tier, I think Specs Magnezone is actually going to pick up a lot of usage over the course of LT. And I'm really curious to see if people are going to use it now that I'm putting out this video. So that's actually one of the main reasons why I wanted to make this video. And also why I elected to make it this week instead of next week, because it's closer to LT and I really want to see if maybe it'll rub off on some people, because it's definitely something that I'm already planning to build around. Next up, we have Crawdon. Crawdon is already actually surging. We saw it quite a few times in the World Cup Pokemon semifinals, and I imagine we'll see it one or two more times in finals as well. But with the ability to no longer feel kind of like awkward and like what nature to run, because Jolly lets you tie Magearna, and Magearna is so common, like, right? And also the fact that there's a natural offensive Pokemon that can kill you easily and live a plus 2 Aqua Jet that's not named Dragapult, so like another one in Magearna. Just that, also something that like doesn't prevent knockoff spam, because you live the knockoff easily with Magearna and then you take an Aqua Jet afterwards, whereas if you knock off something like Clefable or Manabuzz, then Crabhammer is going to shred it afterwards. But like, with Magearna, resist it, and then it's able to live the Aqua Jet and it's quicker, so it's awkward. But yeah, I just feel like Magearna is a natural soft check to Crawdon in a couple ways, and since it's not going to switch in reliably, especially with Crabhammer or like boosted attacks, but it can win that 1v1 comfortably, it can deter knockoff, it can live boosted Aqua Jets, and for a Pokemon that's so offensive, accessible, and can kill it with even a Volt Switch, it's really not good. And because of that, I believe that Crawdon is actually going to see even bigger rise, and I also just think Crawdon's another Pokemon that's really underrated right now. And these two Pokemon are Pokemon that like don't like hard lose to Magearna. Like, they do lose 1v1, right? But like, they don't get completely annihilated by Magearna. Magearna can't really switch into them, for example. But these are Pokemon that I believe are going to advance in the metagame due to either competing with it, i.e. Spec Magnezone, or having soft checking capabilities that make it less convenient to use, i.e. Crawdon. And those are two like more direct like causation relationships. Actually, they're more indirect than something like Alakazam even. Alakazam is pretty straightforward as why it's on this list. Alakazam is on this list because you're able to easily stomach a plus 2 Psychic and even potentially a plus 2 Focus Blast from non-life orb Alakazam, or a plus 2 Focus Blast from Alakazam should be a roll. Friendly Bulk, it should live. And you get nuked by any Specs hit or any boosted attack as well. And also having a Focus Blast a pain in the ass. Honestly, Magearna has been a huge detriment to Alakazam, and one of the main reasons why it's not taken off as like a top 10 or 15 Pokemon in my eyes. And while being reliant on Focus Blast still to deal damage to things like Steel types, Dark types, especially if you like the aforementioned Dazzling Gleam, is going to be a problem. I think Alakazam's going to start to gain some more momentum in the metagame once Magearna goes, and I think that's like a direct, like, because Magearna is a check to it. That's one of the more direct relationships, whereas the Magnezone one competition, like, you got to think a layer into it, or the Crawdon one, you got to think a couple layers into it. So there are more direct relationships like the Alakazam one, then there are more indirect relationships such as competition with Magnezone, or soft checking / making it less convenient with the Crawdon, and then there's something in between. See, on the one hand, Aegislash's ability to check Magearna's defensive sets is cool, but then you realize like a defensive Aegislash is just so useless in this metagame. So it's like, oh, you throw that junk shot right there, you throw that idea out right there. Like, Aegislash kind of gets held back by the fact that Magearna is like a choice spec Pokemon, like a special sweeping Pokemon on Steel type that can really compete with it. And again, you fall into the same pitfall of Magnezone. So yeah, Aegislash I think will get better. All of it says you all around because there's more space to fit it on teams. Unfortunately, I still think with Talk Spec, Buzz all over the place, and Stall teams really naturally handling it pretty damn nicely, it's a hard sell for me, but I think it might finally rise back to OU by usage, just barely. I think it's going to be like a B tier Pokemon. Right now it's kind of like C plus B minus, so it's going to be it's a marginal rise. It's cool, but it's not great. And the next two are more obvious things. Cherrim is going to have one less thing that can deter it from spamming Ice moves, Ice Beam, and Freeze Dry, as well as Draco Meteor dropping the Draco can always be fun. So yeah, it's a pretty direct thing. Like, again, it's just the same thing as Alakazam. And then Rio Nicholas, it doesn't have to worry about boosted Flare Cannons, tricks, and potentially losing to other setup variants if you're running Psychic over Psyshock, which I think is just a tad better right now. Although Psyshock is good for Calm Mind Clef, so Calm Mind Clef picks up, which we'll get to a bit later, then that could be something to change your mind. But yeah, I think Rio Nicholas is going to benefit from that, but with Aldi or Shifu still around, I don't think Rio Nicholas is going to be great. Also, it's worth noting you'd run Focus Plus over Thunder, but these are just sample sets. These aren't like sets to go off of, besides the Magnezone set, which I want to bring up because it's like something that's a bit newer to some of you guys. But yeah, no, you could use, I'm more talking about the Pokemon than the specific sets here. Anyway, those are the offensive beneficiaries of a potential Magearna ban in my eyes. Of course, there are more than just that 6, but those are the 6 like premier ones that come to my mind, if you will. Next up, we have the defensive winners of a potential Magearna ban. That's going to be Tangrowth, Mandibuzz, Slowbro, and Clefable again. I mean, that applies to everything, but Clefable is so versatile, yeah. Ferrothorn, and Weezing Galar. Now, hear me out. Some of these Pokemon don't actually mind. Mainly Ferrothorn minds Specs Magearna and even other sets. Ferrothorn, in fact, can use his Check It, but there are now a lot of ways to fit these Pokemon with defensive structures that previously didn't exist, and here's why. A lot of teams use things like Amoonguss, which is able to resist Flare Cannon and Volt Switch, and also potentially give it Black Sludge if it's tricks, or Toxic, which again, Black Sludge Trick, but also it's able to resist both stabs and it forces it to Volt Switch basically, which means it pairs really nicely with things like Zero Aura, Excadrill, Rhyperior, Powdon to form a core that could check Magearna. But anyway, those like Pokemon are really needed on your defensive cores right now. Not running a Regenerate and Poison on balance right now means you got to run a very small pool of Pokemon to keep Magearna in check, and that's just so ridiculously restrictive. And one of the main reasons as to why I feel it's broken right now, and that was honestly shown really nicely in the World Cup games. Although even in a Magearna game, it was able to break through. But also the first game, there was no Poison type in other team. But that aside, the lack of Amoonguss means there's going to be a ton more Tangrowth. The lack of Toxapex means there's going to be a ton more Slowbro. Now, admittedly, these Pokemon are not going to fall off the face of the earth. In fact, Toxapex in my eyes is still one of, if not the best Pokemon in the metagame. And Amoonguss is still going to be very viable in OU. It's going to be OU by usage. It might fall off from, say, a top 15 Pokemon to a top 25 or 30 Pokemon, but it's still going to be very useful. But this now opens up a lot more space for these Pokemon, and also with Tangrowth being around, a lot more space to soft check Urshifu as well. Think about it like this. You can go to your Tangrowth on a Choice Band Close Combat or Wicked Blow, you're only taking 50, maybe 55% tops of its Adamant. You are to a Kyoto, so you do the 18% with Rocky Helmet, and then you go to your Close Combat or your Wicked Blow Resist, and you're fine. And cores like that are really easy to use, but now they're even easier to use because you don't need to automatically fit Tangrowth plus Toxapex in your teams, because now Tangrowth doesn't necessarily need that Regenerate or Poison type like Toxapex. In addition, another defensive winner, by the way, is Toxic Spikes, which can be run with things like Weezing. We'll get to that in a minute. But Toxic Spikes are going to be good now because there's less need to run a Poison type, but that might be more of a cyclical change because it's going to take a while for people to gravitate away from the Poison types. But I also want to note that the Poison types might not even be fully gravitated away from. They might still be just that good in the metagame that they do other things as well, but now there's less need for them because of Magearna. So that's just something I wanted to note. Tangrowth and Slowbro might finally see a bit more use to where they raise closer to the top tier stages, which we initially imagined they'd be. Right now, Slowbro's taken off pretty nicely, but I feel like Tangrowth has kind of been held back, and I think it's definitely an underrated Pokemon now, and it's going to see even more uses before. Sandwiched between the Tangrowth and Slowbro I've listed is Mandibuzz, just because Mandibuzz gets repeatedly abused by Magearna, especially if it lacks knockoff or U-turn. Because of that, I think that Mandibuzz is going to be even better right now, especially to check other competing steel types like the aforementioned Aegislash, but more importantly, Excadrill as well. Pokemon we'll also be discussing later on, so that's cool. We don't have to worry about it getting Flare Cannon to death. Then we have Growlithorn, another grass type, which might take advantage of the slight lack of Amoonguss, or maybe not. Maybe it's not at all. Maybe it's going to even hurt due to the presence of the Flare Cannons and Flash Cannons that resist no longer being there. And then Clefable, because Clefable is a Fairy type, and it also just got shredded by Flash Cannon and Flare Cannon, so I mean, it's kind of double dipping there, as in it's going to be easy to fit on teams as the primary Fairy type, and it also isn't, destroyed by Spec Magearna or set up on by Set Magearna. So yeah, that goes a long way there. Flamethrower variants might take a bit of a hit, honestly, because Flame was great for Magearna, but all other variants are definitely going to improve. And lastly, we have Weezing Galar for, well, honestly, what I'd classify for as a handful of reasons. A, the aforementioned thing about fitting a Fairy type. B, the fact that Urshifu is now going to be like the center of attention as one of the premier breakers, and it's a great check to it. And C, the fact that Toxic Spikes, Corrosive Gas, there's just a lot more place in the metagame when you don't have something like Magearna that A, necessitates poison types, B, you can't really Corrosive Gas it, I believe, because it's a poison type move, yeah, and C, also, it's just it feels like it's way more fit up splashable on teams, not only after ban, but also as of now, I feel like Weezing already is starting to rise, but Magearna going, something that it can't really do much to unless it's running Flamethrower, and it just gets shredded by a Flash Cannon or Flare Cannon, and is actually really good for it. Yeah, Flare Cannon, by the way, despite the resist, does shred Weezing Galar. It's worth noting. But yeah, no, I think Weezing is actually going to see a slight uptick in usage as well. I'm really curious to see how that manifests during OLT. But anyway, these are 6 defensive Pokemon that might be winners of a potential Magearna ban. I definitely think there are more than just these 6, by the way. Defensive gens are going to shift a ton in the metagame with any ban of a premier breaker, so that's worth noting. But I think these are 6 that have pretty logical explanations behind them, and I hope that you guys understand that. If not, feel free to ask about that in the comments, and also let me know your favorite offensive and defensive Pokemon that you're going to want to try out once Magearna potentially gets banned from the SSU metagame, because there are a lot of things to try out, and I'm really curious to see what you guys have in mind as well, because there might be things that I overlooked, or there might be things that I thought of but didn't think about including in these lists that you guys might think so. So please let me know in the comments. Please, I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say. Now we're going to get to those losers. A little Cubchoo there. Unfortunately, it's not hanging down, symbolizing loser, if you will. But anyway, we're going to go to offensive losers first, and fire types are huge. We got Rotom, Heat, Marowak, Alola as the first 2, and that's primarily because they just are natural checks to the stabs that Magearna has, and also the Rotom Heat in particular is resistant to Volt Switch, and if you run the Lightning Rod on the Marowak Alola, then it could also be a great answer to Volt Switch from Magearna as well. Now, I don't like Marowak Alola regardless because it's not even a good check to Magearna. In fact, it's a very, very crappy check. It loses 1v1 to switching to Floor Cannon and is forced to run Lightning Rod to have any chance of checking it. And on top of that, it's not good at checking things like Volcaron or Alakazam, or I don't know why I said Alakazam, Volcarona or Rotom Heat either, just because they get worn down so easily. In fact, Marowak Alola is a Pokemon that I really just wouldn't use right now. But if you were using it beforehand on a non-Trick Room team, which by the way is the one time I would use it on Trick Room, if you were using it on a non-Trick Room team, then now without Magearna, there's one less huge selling point that makes it like worth using as well. But Rotom Heat, it's still going to be a good Pokemon metagame in my eyes. It's really good against defensive cores with Nasty Plot plus the tool stab it has, and also has great utility. It's actually going to struggle a bit more now though, just because there's not Flare Cannon and Flash Cannon for it to switch into, and not Mind Volt switching. Just one less thing for it to like soft check, if you will. However, the rise of things like Cherum, which we just alluded to, could potentially help it. Although Cherum still stretch it with Draco Meteor, so you got to be careful. Next up, we have Excadrill, just because Excadrill is used a ton as it resists Volt Switch, Flash Cannon, and Flare Cannon. In fact, it's even immune to Volt Switch, which is cool. The necessity for electric immunity is now going to be a bit less prevalent, which is also why I list Zeraora, by the way, because Zeraora was swapped on teams as speed control, primarily because of A, Volt Switch pressure of its own, and B, immunity to opposing Volt Switch, and without Specs Magearna, especially if something like Specs Magnezone just never takes off, then in my eyes, these two just see a little bit less need to be used, but they're still going to be very good Pokemon in the tier. I just see them maybe dropping like a couple percentage in usage. It's really not a huge thing, but Excadrill might be a bit bigger just because it's really great for the current Magearna sets in that it's able to 1v1 them and tank any one hit, barring Specs Aurasphere, which dropped off the face of the earth recently for Trick. And on top of that, people have been running more specially defensive sets, and then those pummel the bulky setup sets as well. So yeah, that goes a long way for Drill, and unfortunately it might hurt it here. In Zeraora, it's just a Volt Switch immunity, but we'll have to see if that sticks. Next up, we have Volcarona and Cinderace, just two fire types, which can stomach any hit, and decimated offensively as well. I think Volcarona in particular is going to take a little hit just because it's really naturally good against Magearna, especially if it's a Roost set. But with that said, it really wasn't primarily used to check Magearna, it was primarily used as a win condition. It's still going to be able to serve me the same way, so wait to see how that goes. And then Cinderace, again, it just takes any one hit and just shreds it back. Not really a huge thing. Cinderace is still going to be one of the best, if not the best Pokemon metagame, and I think it's actually ban-worthy as well as suspect-worthy, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. It's definitely not a huge loser there. That's why I listed it last, despite it being far and away the best of these 6 Pokemon, and probably the most common one as well. Yeah, according to East is the most common one as well. So yeah, these are the offensive losers. Let me know if you have any personal Pokemon you believe are going to get worse due to Magearna getting potentially banned, in your opinion. I'd also love to hear your opinions on the potential losers in your eyes as well. Also want to note that while this is a shorter Metagame Monday, just because we have a very set topic, and that's the winners and losers of Magearna, so you can only go over so much, if you will. I still have a lot of more intricate Metagame Mondays in the future. They're going to be closer to 40 minutes to an hour like the other ones, but this one's probably going to be around a half hour. But I just want to say it before I lose you all and go through the defensive losers in this video. Thank you guys so much for the support recently. If you guys enjoy that, be sure to like, and again, comment not only your thoughts on the losers and winners, but also just anything you think about the metagame, and you want Magearna banned or not, and why. I'd love to hear from you all, or just comment for the algorithm, it helps me. Why the hell not? But on top of that, guys, we're approaching 5,000 subscribers. If you guys hit that subscribe button, it'd be great. I mean, I can't force you to do that, I'm just telling you, man to man, it'd mean a lot. It would really mean a lot. So yeah, you can do that or not. I get it. Anyway, we also have some really exciting stuff coming on my channel. If you haven't done it so already, check out my channel update. I'm gonna be bringing you guys one, maybe 2 new series on top of laddering for the official ladder tournament. If you don't know what that is, then definitely check out the video, guys. A ton of cool stuff going on. I also want to help you guys get involved with big tournaments and get better at the metagame, and I feel like a lot of people are already getting better because of these videos, so let's keep it up, guys. I love making the difference I'm making right now. It's really so fun for me, and as you can't tell, I'm just more enthusiastic in these videos in general just because there's so much cool stuff going on right now, and I feel like I'm kind of reaching this community, and it's great, the impact we're having, so let's keep it up. I mean, hell yeah. Finchinator, y'all. That's not a thing. Nah. But anyway, we also have the defensive losers before I continue to make an asshole out of myself. Those are going to be Amogus and Toxfix for the aforementioned reasons. They're just great pivots to Magearna, and now there's less of a stronghold on the balanced archetype due to the restrictions of Magearna that loosens up their structures to the extent that you don't necessarily need Amogus and Toxfix, especially Amogus. However, they're still very good Pokemon, especially Toxfix, to the point where Toxfix is undeniably going to be a top 5 to 7 Pokemon no matter how you look at it. Until DLC 2 happens, and maybe then it'll get worse if we see things like Gliscor and Misty Terrain, and other Pokemon that could potentially abuse it. But even then, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. But with that said, for now, it could take a slight dip. I don't know. I mean, I was hesitant to include Toxic's as loser because it's just so good. It's really been winning in the metagame as overall, but it did pivot nicely into the stabs of Magearna, so I figured why not. And yeah, same could be said for Amoonguss. It also resisted Volt Switch and while it took neutral damage from Flash Cannon, it could scout it out and then get out of the way, especially if you ran a bit more special defense investment than the spread has here. But yeah, no, these Pokemon could potentially be slight losers or even decently sized losers in the metagame. We'll have to wait and see. Blissey, just because, it didn't mind Trick as much as Chansey. It was a really common pivot, and it was able to stomach anything that especially Magearna threw at it, as well as beat the offensive set of variants, not the Pain Splitter, Stored Power ones potentially, but yeah. Jirachi, really the only reason to use Jirachi right now was either the Choice Scarf on slimy, kind of grimy offensive teams, which I don't love, but also as defensive check to Magearna, and well, that'll no longer be a thing. And same goes for Scizor. Really not much reason to use it right now besides being defensive check to Scizor to Magearna. Scizor didn't even do a great job of doing that. Honestly, Scizor is hanging on by a thread to stay usage-wise OU, and I don't love that. I think it's a UU Pokemon this generation, so hopefully that'll change in the future. But yeah, no, neither of these Pokemon are going to love Magearna going just because it kind of were steel types that were able to shut it down, resist the stabs, and not mind Volt Switch too much, especially in Jirachi's case, which up, heal up, eventually beat it down. Yeah. And then last but not least is Slowbro Galar. Pokemon that really isn't great in OU regardless, but especially defensive Regenerator sets were able to take Flare Cannons well. Volt Switch was barely out damaging Regenerator, and Flash Cannon might take you out. It's a roll after Black Sludge, but even then you can just regen out, force it to Predict Red again, etc. And if you trick it Black Sludge, that's not great. So yeah, these are some defensive losers. Pokemon that were able to handle Magearna that are no longer into place. For losers, it's pretty simple. It's just Pokemon that were good against Magearna that now you might see different alternatives used on structures because of Magearna no longer being in the metagame. And that pretty much sums it up for these Pokemon. Although, again, I still think Toxapex and probably Blissey as well are still going to be great in the metagame, as well as Amoonguss being pretty good. So let's wait and see how those shift. But yeah, so these are the winners and losers of the potential Magearna ban. I hope you guys enjoyed this Metagame Monday. Again, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Let me know potential topics for another Metagame Monday if you're still watching at this point. And in addition to that, if you're still watching at this point, let me know what your favorite stage of SSU thus far is, i.e., what month of 2020 was your favorite SSU? Because it's kind of shifted from time to time and time again. I'm really curious about kind of the history of SSU thus far, what you guys are going about, because I'm thinking about making a history video like that in the future. And if you guys would like that video, also be sure to let me know in the comments below. But in the meantime, guys, this is going to be it for this Metagame Monday. The winners and losers of potential Magearna ban. Let me know your thoughts on them. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. And have a great day, guys. This is Finch. All right. Peace out. Bye, guys.